Hey, what's up, Mavs fans? Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre and post game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for my latest video on Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to download and subscribe to the Inside The Mavs podcast. Wherever you get podcasts for free, give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can also find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. And like and comment on this video with your Mavericks trade ideas as we get closer to the February 8th NBA trade deadline. For the Mavericks, it's about getting back on the floor as they've had the last 4 days off as they get ready to take on the Boston Celtics on Monday before welcoming Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns in on Wednesday before they travel to Atlanta on Friday. A team that's got a difficult 8-game stretch here that will see them play some of the best teams in the league as they get ready for the NBA All-Star break. But yet and still, the Mavericks find themselves in a good spot at 24-18, 6 games above 500, and currently 6th in the Western Conference as they try to move forward up the West standings, where we've seen teams like the Clippers and obviously the Denver Nuggets, along with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Oklahoma City Thunder, have really terrific seasons so far this year. And for the Mavericks, a team that's gone through a lot of adversity, whether it be injury or otherwise, they find themselves 14-5 in clutch games this year, even with guys like Kyrie Irving missing double-digit games due to injury. Luka Doncic even missing some time recently with a right ankle sprain. Derek Lively II has 2 separate left ankle sprains that he's overcome so far this year, as Dante Exum continues to work back from injury himself. So you get my drift here in terms of the lack of continuity that the Mavericks have dealt with so far this year. In fact, they've started 24 different starting lineups so far this season, by far the most in the NBA, and yet and still find themselves playing good enough basketball to be a top 6 team in the West. The question is, can they continue to improve as we get closer to the NBA trade deadline that will allow them the opportunity to climb, hopefully, to a top 4 spot in the West by season's end? Again, we know that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are going to be your top 2 scorers and provide you that level of offensive prowess every single night. Defensively, will the question be answered for the rest of the season about if the Mavericks can remain somewhere in between 15 and 19 defensively that will give them the chance to finish possibly in the top 4 in the West? That remains to be seen on what happens on the floor. But there is no shortage of trade conversation and rumors around this team as we get closer to the trade deadline on February the 8th. For the Mavericks, we have heard several names be rumored to this team, whether it be pie in the sky ideas like a Draymond Green or a Pascal Siakam, who, of course, is now with the Indiana Pacers, to other names such as our old friend Dorian Finney-Smith, a PJ Washington, among others, even new rumored names like a Miles Bridges in Charlotte, who we detailed in our last conversation. But for the Mavericks, though, they need to find a player that Mark Cuban says is a guy that's around 6'8", 6'9", can put the ball on the floor, can shoot from 3, and can defend. Newsflash. Every team in the NBA is looking for that high-level type of player, and it's going to cost you if you can find one in and around the league. That's where my good buddy Mark Stein comes in from Substack, his latest reporting on the Mavericks and what they are inquiring on to try and possibly fill that need, which is one that they do have. Now, Mark Stein reports that the Mavericks are inquiring or have inquired about the services of Kyle Kuzma from the Washington Wizards. Now, the 28-year-old, who, of course, is averaging over 21 points a game so far this year, can provide you another level of scoring with a guy that's 6'8", 6'9", and can put the ball on the deck and get the ball to the basket. But at the same time, if you're the Mavericks, are you willing to leverage your future in order to do it? You say, Kevin, well, what do you mean by that? The Wizards apparently are asking for at least 2 first-round picks and looking for the kind of quality of first-round picks on par with what the Toronto Raptors were able to get from the Indiana Pacers, to which I say, good luck with that, because I don't know if anyone will be able to extract that kind of value the way that the Indiana Pacers were able to give to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for Siakam. This is another reason why teams around the league, especially for the Mavericks, have got to find a way to acquire, capital in order to be in position to make these kinds of trades. Because if you don't, you may not necessarily have the ammunition to make a move for a Kuzma. More on that here in just a minute. From Washington's perspective, if you look at the last couple of trades that they've made, the big ones that they've made, whether it be the Kristaps Porzingis deal or the Bradley Beal deal, you weren't necessarily able to get a lot of value. In fact, you didn't net the kind of first round pick that would allow you to feel good about trying to move on without asking for a lot, whether it be for a Daniel Gafford or, in this case, a Kyle Kuzma. But for the Mavericks, you say, look, are we willing to leverage our future based on what we have and may not have available to move in order to acquire a player, even the likes of a Kyle Kuzma? Daniel Gafford, who we've talked about, could be a guy that could be in play for the Mavericks on a 3-year, $40 million deal, making $13 million per as an unrestricted free agent in 2026. And throughout his career, has played well against the Mavericks, averaging 10 points per game, nearly 9 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game. And so far this season, similar numbers, 10 points, 8 rebounds, and a little over 2 blocks per game in 26 minutes per game so far this year, and can provide you some frontline help in terms of rebounding. Now, Kyle Kuzma, who I mentioned so far, averaging nearly 22 points per game, shooting 45.5% from the field, shooting 34% from three on nearly 7 attempts per night when he plays 31 minutes a night on average, can provide you some scoring and frontline help, and can also provide a little bit of rebounding. He also gives you about 4 assists a night as well. But when you look at what he's doing on the defensive end so far this year, it hasn't been great. A 123.3 defensive rating. He's got an overall net rating of 12.6 on the negative side. You look at what he's done over the last couple of years defensively, by far his worst defensive rating over the last 5 seasons. You look at his last 2 years in Los Angeles, where he had a defensive rating of 105.2, then 105.4. Then his first year in Washington, 114.3. Last season, 112.6. This year, as I mentioned, over 123. So could Kuzma use a change of scenery in Dallas? I'm sure that he could for a team that right now is 7-34 so far through 41 games and has several names on their team who other teams are inquiring about, including the Mavericks when it comes to guys like Daniel Gafford and Deni Avdija. But if you look at the Mavericks' perspective here, let's look at the trade capital that they may have to offer for a team like the Wizards, maybe looking to move on from Kyle Kuzma. Mavericks don't have much. Remember, they still have to convey a first-round pick to New York in either 24 or 25 for Kristaps Porzingis. Yes, that Kristaps Porzingis trade still looms over the Mavericks organization as they've not conveyed their first-round pick. Remember, they also moved on from a first-round pick in order to acquire Kyrie Irving. So that means they only have one available first-round pick right now to trade and to offer teams to acquire other players. And that's a first-round pick in 2027. Now, the Wizards seem determined to get as much value as they can, whether it be for Gafford, Deni Avdija, or in this case, Kyle Kuzma. And I don't think it's worth it for the Mavericks to leverage whatever little future that they have left from a capital standpoint to acquire Kyle Kuzma, even if he increases your ceiling a little bit, because what that looks like down the road could be very interesting. The Mavericks are already paying max contracts and near max contracts to Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Now, Kyle Kuzma is in year 1 of a 4-year, $90 million contract extension. That's paying him over $25 million so far this year, and does descend by the time you get to year 4 to $19.4 million. So maybe if you're the Mavericks, you decide that you can acquire a Kuzma, be able to absorb that contract, and feel like the three of them, whether it be Luka, Kyrie, and Kyle Kuzma, can help you be able to move forward in the West. But what does that mean you have to give up if you're the Mavericks? Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been spectacular so far this year, a leading sixth man of the year candidate. Are you willing to part with him? Are you willing to part with Jaden Hardy or Josh Green, two of your young players that so far have shown flashes this season when they've had opportunities to play? Or you do have a guy in Rashawn Holmes who has a $12 million player option going into this upcoming summer, that if the team were able to acquire him, if he denies the option, that contract then comes off of your books. So there are pieces that the Mavericks could offer, but they don't have the kind of ammunition to be able to make a high-level move that you would probably want them to make. It's the same detailed conversation that we had about Pascal Siakam. You saw how much value the Toronto Raptors were able to get for Siakam and moving him on to Indiana. The Mavericks simply don't have that. Even the 2 first-round picks that the Wizards are asking for, the Mavericks don't have that either. So you're going to have to part with probably your best tradable player in Tim Hardaway Jr., along with a young guy, to make it worthwhile for the Wizards to be able to take them on to move on from Kyle Kuzma. Again, Daniel Gafford remains a really nice option for the Mavericks and provides you some frontline help there. All that to say is standing pat may be the best option for the Mavericks here based on what's available from a capital perspective, the health that they should get more of as the rest of the season goes on, and seeing how the continuity plays out with Luka, with Kyrie, with Derek Lively II, and others being able to get some real time on the floor together before you start making changes to a roster and causing some upheaval that would disrupt the chemistry that you're trying to build and haven't been able to build on a consistent basis throughout the course of the regular season so far. Even if you introduce Kuzma to this lineup, he could provide you that level of scoring, but defensively, how does he fit in? That would be a major question for any team that acquires Kyle Kuzma. In that case, could he get back to the defensive player that he was during his last couple of years with the Los Angeles Lakers? Only time would tell if a team would decide to do that. But for the Mavericks, discretion may be the better part of valor here as we get closer to the NBA trade deadline, and a smaller move, as we detailed, whether it be like a PJ Washington of that nature, could be a prudent move for them to make. Not necessarily on the board or on the train of acquiring Miles Bridges, even with the $7.9 million contract that he's on. He'll be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season as well. So there are options for this Mavericks team to get better. The question will be, are they able to supply the kind of ammunition in order to make a move that will increase their ceiling while also not disrupting the kind of chemistry that they're trying to build for this team moving forward? And if you can find that, okay, maybe you make that move, but leveraging whatever little future that you have from a capital standpoint may not necessarily be the right move for Kyle Kuzma, even with the skill set that he brings. Mark Cuban and Nico Harrison are going to have to be the ones that answer that question, given what this team is trying to improve and what they need, which is size in the front line, another guy that can put the ball on the floor and defend and provide you a level of versatility from a scoring perspective that the Mavericks could use with a guy who has size in order to do it. That's what the Mavericks need. It's hard to find in today's NBA because there are only so many guys in the league that provide that. If the Mavericks are able to do it, then yeah, as I've said before and say plenty of times, scared money don't make money. But in this case, you ain't got a lot of it, whether it be from a capital perspective or literally a money perspective with how close they are to the luxury tax, which is something else you have to consider for any move that the Mavericks make. All that remains to be seen, though, as we get to the NBA trade deadline on February the 8th, as the Mavericks look forward to trying getting better for this team as they get closer to playoff time, where hopefully they can make a run, especially with Luka and Kyrie leading the charge for this team. Again, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to download and subscribe to the Inside The Mavs podcast wherever you get podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. Like and comment on this video. Let me know about my thoughts on this whole Kyle Kuzma thing, what other trade ideas you may have going forward as well. And we'll talk about them definitely here on Inside The Mavs. You can catch me every Mavericks pre and post game on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Again, my name is Kevin Gray, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.